Okay, Casey, we're gonna keep going on the Beatles. Get Back. We did the verse. We did the intro. We did the verse. This next little part for the chorus, you're gonna need to kind of see how this movable 7-chord pattern can be moved up. Whenever you take a D chord, and when you turn it into a D7, it's what you call a dominant 7 chord. It's when you take that chord has been changed to include the 7th. The note that's the whole step behind the root. In this case, the D is now going to include the note C. And the reason we do that is because it leads you somewhere else. The dominant 7 leads you back to what would be considered the home chord, which is the G. Listen to that. So what's happening here is we're going to take a D chord, turn it into a D7. Okay, but that's a movable chord. If you notice, the root D is on the 4th string. Okay, so if we move this shape up, that 4th string still stays open. And we don't want that. We want that root note to move up with us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch these 3 fingers out and put my 2nd, 3rd, and 4th finger down and play those notes for the D7. And that frees up my 1st finger to play the note below. So right now it would just be an open note. But if I moved it up 2 frets, now my 1st finger can play the note E, and then we have an E7 chord. Okay? So it looks, this part right here looks very similar to that D7 shape. But our other 3 fingers are playing it so that our 1st finger can play the root E, which is on that 4th string. So if that's an E7, we move it up 1 fret, you got yourself an F7. So if we move that up 1 fret, we have an F7. Okay? So if we move the whole shape up so our 1st finger's on the 3rd fret of the 4th string, and everything else moves up relatively, then we've got an F7. Okay? If we move that up 2 frets, our 1st finger is on the G that's on the 4th string. We've got a G7. Okay? If we move it up 2 more frets, we've got an A7. Okay? This is a really important chord for the chorus of Get Back. Okay? You're going to have this little strumming pattern is going to be at the end of each little lick. So it's going to sound something like 1, 2, 3, and a 4 and. Yeah, it'll be 1, 2, 3, and a 4 and a 4 and. That's what we're looking for. So you're going to go. That's the strum pattern, okay? But it's going to come after the lick that's just before that. So you'll hear this. Okay, so we're going to add that now. Our 3rd finger is going to slide up from the 7th fret to the 9th. Of the 6th string. As soon as you do that, our 1st finger moves up to the 7th fret of the 5th string. Here it comes again. And then we play the 3rd finger on that same string. So it goes. And then our 1st finger goes up and plays the A that's on the 4th string. Okay, now because our 1st finger is on that A now, we just drop the rest of that 7th chord I had a second ago. Okay? There it is. So that's our A7. When you put that all together, you'll have this. Okay? So what we've got there is an A7 with a riff in A coming up to before there. The next thing's pretty cool. You're going to go to a different kind of 7th chord. Okay, we're going to base this one on. Let's look at this A chord that we're used to seeing. Okay, an A chord. When you make that an A7, you could do something like this. Let me back this up so you can see it. An A7 could just take out the root A from the third string, but you can also just keep that chord down and put that 7th note, the G, up top on the high string. Okay, so that's also a 7 chord. If that's an A7 there, then that whole thing can be moved up. Now in this case, we're just not going to play the 5th string, but if this is an A7, and that means if we move it up 2 frets, this becomes a B7. Okay, let me back up a little bit, go back to the A7 and show you another way to play this though. Instead of playing all this with all 4 fingers, we're going to try and play it with our first finger like this, and our second finger playing that G. So our first finger bars, and our second finger plays the G. Okay, and that'll get easier to do as you move up the neck. But so there's your A7. Move it up 2 frets, and you've got a B7. 1 fret, it's a C7. 2 more frets, it's a D7. Okay, now this is when it gets kind of cool. So we just played the part over the A7 before we went. Okay, when we go to play that riff over the D7, remember we're going to land right here. Our first finger is on the 7th fret, barring the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th strings, and our second finger is going to drop down and play right there on that C on the 1st string. Okay, but you have to play the lick first, so you're going to hear this. See how I did that? The riff, then I put the rest of the bar down and put our second finger down on the C. And then we go back to the original A7. So here's what's going to go. You're going to go twice on the A7 with the riff. Back to A7. Pretty cool, huh? So one more time, you have the riff, which is playing in this little box right here. Okay? A7, A7, D7, A7 next time. Okay? Alright, that's the first part. Well, actually, no, that's the chorus.